It's easy to look brave when people are watching. The real question is what happens later, when no one is there and only you remember what you promised. Would you still keep your word if no one ever found out? Long before stories were written to entertain, they were told to remember, not to explain the world, but to explain ourselves. Long before courage became a word people admired, it was something people feared, because courage always demands a price. Centuries ago, in a time when honor was not an idea but a rule, there was a young knight standing in the court of King Arthur. He was surrounded by legends, men whose names were already sung by poets, men whose courage had been proven again and again, and yet this story is not about them. It is about someone younger, someone quieter, someone who had not yet learned the difference between looking brave and being brave. His name was Gawain, and on a single winter's day, during a celebration meant to honor courage, he was offered a choice that would follow him for the rest of his life. Not a choice of strength, not a choice of skill, but a choice of honesty, one that could not be escaped by time, distance, or silence. It was New Year's Day, a moment meant for beginnings, not endings. The great hall of King Arthur was filled with warmth and sound. Firelight danced across stone walls. Music echoed between pillars built to last longer than memory. This was a place where courage was expected, where honor was spoken openly, where every man believed he knew who he was. Knights sat shoulder to shoulder, their armor polished, their stories already told 100 times before. Victories were remembered, failures were quietly forgotten. For Gawain, this world was still new. He listened more than he spoke. He watched more than he acted. Surrounded by legends, it was easy to feel smaller than the stories that filled the room. And yet there was comfort in that certainty. The rules were clear. Bravery meant action. Honor meant reputation. In this hall, who you were was defined by what others saw. No one questioned it. No one needed to. Until the doors opened. The doors did not burst open. They opened slowly, as if the hall itself hesitated. Cold air entered first. The warmth of the fire recoiled. Music faded. Voices fell silent. Then a rider crossed the threshold. He was tall, unmoving, entirely green. Not just his cloak or his armor, but his skin, his hair, even the horse beneath him. He carried no shield, no sword raised in challenge, only an axe resting calmly in his hand. There was no anger in his face, no urgency, only certainty, the kind that does not ask for permission. He did not bow to the king. He did not acknowledge the knights. He simply looked around the hall, as if measuring something unseen, and in that silence, everyone understood the same thing. This was not a man who feared death. Some thought him a monster, others a spirit, a test sent by fate. But the Green Knight spoke gently, almost kindly. He said he had come not to fight, but to play a game. A simple game, he promised. One knight would be allowed to strike him once, freely, without consequence. No retaliation, no pursuit, no punishment. In return, 1 year later, that same knight would seek him out and receive the same blow. The offer hung in the air. It sounded fair, it sounded harmless, and yet no one moved. Because every man in that hall understood something unspoken. The danger was not in the strike. The danger was in the waiting. The hall remained silent, not the silence of confusion, but the silence of understanding. Every knight knew what the game demanded, and every knight knew the cost was not in the strike, but in what followed. Eyes shifted. Hands tightened around goblets and hilts. Courage, it seemed, had suddenly become very heavy. King Arthur moved first, not because he lacked bravery, but because a king could not allow fear to sit unchallenged in his hall. He reached for the axe, and before he could lift it, Gawain stepped forward. He was younger than the others, less proven, still learning what his name meant. He did not step forward to be remembered. He stepped forward because someone had to, because silence, left alone, has a way of choosing for us. Gawain asked to take the king's place, not as a hero, but as a nephew, as a knight, as a man who believed that courage should be shared, not displayed. The Green Knight accepted without hesitation. The axe was placed in Gawain's hands. For a moment, time seemed to slow. The fire crackled. The hall held its breath. And in that stillness, Gawain raised the axe and brought it down. The blow was clean, decisive. The head fell to the stone floor. For a heartbeat, the world made sense again. Then the Green Knight moved. He bent down calmly, picked up his severed head, and turned toward the stunned hall. Blood did not spill. Pain did not touch him. The mouth of the head opened and it spoke. In 1 year's time, it said, "You will seek me out. You will come alone. And you will receive the same blow in return." With that, the Green Knight walked out of the hall, leaving behind no body, no victory, and no certainty. Only a promise, and a year that had just begun. The hall returned to its warmth. The fire burned as it always had. Music slowly found its way back into the air. The moment passed, and the story began to change. What had been fear became excitement. What had been silence became laughter. The tale of the Green Knight spread quickly, retold with smiles, sharpened by pride. Gawain was praised. His name was spoken with admiration. His courage grew larger with every telling. But courage sounds different when it is repeated by others. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the applause faded. Winter gave way to spring, spring to summer, summer to autumn. And with every passing season, the promise remained. At first, it felt distant, almost unreal, a story for later, a problem for another version of himself. But time has a way of narrowing distance. As the year moved on, the thought returned more often, in quiet moments, in the space between conversations, in the silence before sleep. Gawain began to understand what the game truly was. The challenge was never the strike. The challenge was living with a future already decided, knowing the day would come, knowing where it would end, and knowing that no one else would stand beside him when it did. The court still saw a hero, a young knight who had faced the impossible, but inside something had begun to shift. Courage was no longer loud. It no longer felt certain. It became quieter, heavier, and for the first time Gawain felt what the others had felt that day, the weight of waiting. When the time finally came, there was no ceremony, no music, no crowd, no speeches about honor or bravery. Gawain left quietly. The gates opened and closed behind him without hesitation. The road ahead was narrow, cold, unforgiving. With every step away from the court, the world grew simpler and harsher. There were no stories on the road, no applause, no witnesses, only movement, only breath, only the sound of boots against frozen ground. Days passed, then weeks. Forests swallowed the path. Snow erased direction. The sky pressed low and heavy. Hunger followed him. Fatigue settled into his bones. And in the quiet, thoughts returned. Not heroic thoughts, not visions of glory, but questions. Why had he stepped forward? Was it courage? or fear of silence? Would he have made the same choice if no one had been watching? The road did not answer. It only continued. At night, as the fire burned low, the promise felt closer, not as a story, not as a challenge, but as an ending waiting patiently ahead. And for the first time, Gawain understood something simple and terrifying. This journey was not meant to test his strength. It was meant to strip him of everything else. After days of cold and hunger, the castle appeared without warning. Warm light spilled from its windows. Smoke rose gently into the winter sky. It felt unreal, like mercy. Inside there was fire, food, a bed that did not freeze beneath him. For the first time in weeks, Gawain was not alone. The lord of the castle welcomed him kindly. No questions were asked, no promises demanded, only rest. Each day the lord rode out to hunt. Each night Gawain remained behind, safe, warm, unchallenged. And slowly something began to change. The road had taken his strength. The cold had taken his certainty. What remained was fear, quiet, reasonable, and patient. Fear that asked nothing heroic, only survival. In this place of comfort, danger did not arrive with blades or threats. It arrived as relief, as the thought that maybe there was another way to keep his promise and keep his life. And for the first time, Gawain felt the pull of an easier choice, one no one would ever see. During his stay at the castle, Gawain was given a challenge unlike any before. Each morning, the lord of the castle left to hunt, and before leaving, he made a simple agreement with Gawain. Whatever the lord gained during the day, he would give to Gawain at night, and whatever Gawain received during the day, he would give back in return. It sounded harmless, even fair. For the first 2 days, Gawain kept his word, but on the third day, something changed. The lady of the castle came to him alone. She spoke softly, not with threats, but with kindness. Before she left, she gave Gawain a green girdle. She told him it would protect his life, that no blade could harm him as long as he wore it. Gawain hesitated, then he took it. That night, when the lord returned from the hunt, Gawain did not give the girdle back. He kept it hidden, not because he wished to lie, but because he feared dying. In that moment, he broke the agreement, and without knowing it, he failed the true test of the game. Because the challenge was never about strength. It was about honesty when fear offers an easier path. At last, Gawain stood before the Green Knight. There was no crowd, no hall, no applause, only the sound of the wind and the weight of what was promised. The Green Knight raised his axe. Gawain did not run. He did not speak. He closed his eyes and waited. The blade fell and stopped. The Green Knight laughed softly. He told Gawain the truth. The lord of the castle had been him all along. The bargain, the temptation, the green girdle, all of it had been part of the test. Gawain had been spared, not because he was perfect, but because he was human, because he feared death, and because he was honest enough to feel shame for it. Gawain returned to the court alive. He was welcomed as a hero, praised for his courage, celebrated for surviving what no one else had faced. But Gawain did not feel victorious. He wore the green girdle openly, not as a trophy, but as a reminder of the moment he chose survival over honesty. The court laughed. They dismissed his shame. They called him humble, but Gawain knew better. Because the Green Knight had not tested his strength. He had tested who Gawain was when no one was watching. This is where the legend ends and where we begin. Every day we make choices no one sees, choices that protect us, and choices that cost us. If you were in Gawain's place and no one would ever know the truth, would you choose your safety or your honesty?